Hi everyone, I'm with a great friend and business colleague, Adam. And Adam and I didn't know each other before we both started our own businesses, and we've become great friends, and we have a real laugh. We've been to Kilimanjaro together, we've been on some whitewater canoeing, rafting, and
You tried to drown me twice.
I did. But the reason I want to sort of ask Adam a few questions is that he's got a massive amount of experience, and really it comes from the heart, and he's helped me so much over the last few years. So Adam, really just could you tell me why you entered the world of entrepreneurship when actually it's probably more difficult to do that than it is to have a traditional job in the world?
Well, I mean, like most people, I was brought up as a child to think about jobs and careers because that's all they ever talked about in school. But once somebody opened my eyes to the fact that you could actually run your own business, have your own show, I was always interested in being an entrepreneur. And I think the simple thing is I wanted to own my life. And I thought running my own business would allow me to own my life, because when you work for somebody else, you simply don't.
Obviously now you've had so many years of experience. Can you think back to when you first started and why you sort of became an entrepreneur? Obviously it's relatively easy now, I guess, because you're successful. But how do you keep going back to really focusing on helping new people maybe looking at this for the very first time?
Well, I think the longer we're in a business, the more we forget, and we start assuming that new people know how to do things. And I think it's really important that, particularly in what we do in Forever, is we need to remember what it's like to be a new distributor, and we need to go right the way back to basics. We need to help people fall in love with the products. We need to help people develop a 20 to 30 customer retail base, so they're retailing 4Case credits, not using retailing and sponsoring to do for, but retailing 4Case credits. And we need to help people through the recruiting cycle, through the sponsoring cycle, so that they sponsor their first few people. And then we need to make sure the duplication process happens down to the second, possibly third generation, just to make sure everyone within reach of us has a complete understanding of how that works. And sometimes it's really difficult to do, but I've always thought that leadership is about qualifying for things ourselves, and the way we qualify is by building our own business. And when we build our own business, it keeps us right at the cold face, because what we're doing is we're keeping our pickaxes sharp, we're keeping our shovels sharp.
Fantastic. And I come across a lot of people that are in successful jobs, they're getting paid well, but maybe they can't see what we do because of a time constraint. Maybe they think to themselves, well, maybe I could do this, but I haven't got any time to do it. What would you say to those people?
I genuinely think that people must be sticking their heads in the sand if they don't know what's going on. I mean, I spoke a week or two ago about the fact that I came through passport control on my way back from Norway, and I got in the wrong queue, and I ended up in the queue where you had to physically show your passport to a real person. And although there were only maybe 50 or 60 of us in that queue, it took us longer than a queue of hundreds of people long, because there were about 20 or 25 bio-identity passport things where you just showed your passport and it checks your retina. And that relates back to an article I saw which said that by 2025 it's possible that 50% of jobs will be lost due to robotization and mechanization. So even people in jobs, you must be sticking your heads in the sand. But even worse, it's pensions. I mean, I read a report a couple of days ago, and it's the World Economic Forum said that pressure on pensions is the financial equivalent of climate change, because it's guaranteed that although retirement ages will be 67 by 2025, it's highly likely that within a few short years they'll be up beyond 70, because we just can't afford to support the aging population. And currently, the deficit between what people need and what they have in pensions is £6 trillion. But by 2050, that'll be £25 trillion. Now, I've got 3 kids who are currently 22, 18 and by 2050 they're going to be, I think I worked out they were going to be 56, 54 and 51. And if you consider that half of all babies born today will live to be 100 or more, can you imagine the financial pressure that's going to be on our kids and our grandchildren, not just in terms of not being able to enjoy their retirement because their retirement ages will be pushed up, but also because of the amount that they're going to be getting. I mean, people will be surviving, and it will be the rich few who will be able to retire early and enjoy their retirement. And the gap between rich and poor will widen even further because of this pensions thing. So if you have children, you need to be seriously thinking about what you can do to not just provide for you in your lifetime, so you're not a burden on them, but also how you can provide a legacy for them so they won't be a burden on their children, and so on. And one of the great ways, I think, the best way to do that is to build a forever business, because your income can be passed to your kids, and then your kids can pass it to their kids, and so on. What you're building now with Forever can help not just you, it can benefit not just you, but also your family, your children, your grandchildren, and every single person. I don't care how busy you are, I don't care how little time you think you've got, every single person can find 5 to 10 hours a week, which, if that is focused on the income producing activities, can help build a serious business. And if even people in successful jobs that aren't listening to you, Phil, I mean, seriously, they must be sticking their heads in the sand, because this stuff is everywhere. And people need to wake up and pay attention to what's really happening in the world today.
Fantastic. That's I've just been blown away by some of those figures, and actually quite worrying. You know, what
incredibly worrying. I mean, I'm okay. My kids will be okay, because, you know, I have built a fantastic global business with Forever. I get a global income from 40 countries. When I die, which hopefully won't be until I'm 100, I'm working on it, at least 100. But my kids will be able to inherit that. So, you know, whatever they do for jobs, and all I ever want for my children is to do something that they're passionate about, not just have to do something to pay the bills. But even if they do something, and even if they are saving, and I've tried to make them understand the financial realities of life, so I hope they're going to be savers rather than spenders. But even if they do that, I'm still going to be able to help them further down the line, because they're going to be able to inherit my Forever income.
Okay, fantastic. And just one final thing. Obviously, we've been building a business for many years, as you have successfully. People are just starting out on their journey, and a lot of the things that maybe we've achieved might seem so far away that it's almost untouchable. What would you say to encourage the people that are just starting or thinking about starting, thinking, you know, it's going to be a long journey, or maybe actually not so long, but how would they start to understand about what we're able to show them and what we've achieved, and how could they do it? Well,
the first thing to understand is that we all started from the same place. We all filled a form in. In my case, it was a paper form. I think in your case it was a paper form in quadruplicate, which we sent off. We got our boxes, we started playing with the products, we started talking to people about the products and the opportunity, and it's exactly the same today. We all start from the same place. But what I would strongly suggest to people is that you do it in that order. You really fall in love with the products. Once you're in love with the products, it becomes easy to develop customers. Easier to develop customers, because, you know, I use the word easy freely, but actually, as with prospecting, most people say no. So you've got to be prepared to go through that. The second thing is to handle that rejection from customers or potential customers, and from potential distributors. And the way you can handle that is by getting to know your numbers. You know, the law of averages. There's a great chapter in the Answer, which is a CD by Alan and Barbara Pease, which came out recently, and he talks about the law of averages. And when he was a 13-year-old school kid in Australia, he would be out selling sponges door to door, and he knew his numbers. So, you know, he'd worked out, I think his numbers were something like 10, 7, 4 and 2, which meant that if he knocked on 10 doors, he'd get 7 people would answer the door, 4 people would listen to his presentation, and 2 people would buy sponges. And he knew that if he knocked on 40 doors an evening, he'd make $2.40, which, as he said, was a fantastic amount for a kid to be earning in those days. But he worked his average out, and then he went selling pots and pans door to door. And he knew that if he knocked on 10 doors, then, you know, he'd get 6 answers, and 3 would listen and 1 would buy. And he basically worked out that every time he knocked on a door, when he was a schoolboy, he'd be making, 10 cents or something like that. When he was selling pots and pans as an 18-year-old, he'd be making, $3 every time he knocked on a door. And then he went into the life insurance business and he hit the big time, because within a year he was in the $1 Million Club. And he said even then he'd worked his numbers out that if he just stopped, I think it was about 160 people on the street, and asked the simple question, would you like to buy life insurance? 3 would say yes. And in that way, he would get in the $1 Million Club. And that's how he did it. He knew his numbers. And if you know your numbers, it makes it much more encouraging. So if you speak to 10 people, you know you'll get 1 sign up, because you speak to 10, you get 5 one-to-ones, 2 will come to a business presentation, 1 person will join. If you know those are your numbers, then even if you speak to 90 and they all say no, statistically, the law of averages says that the next 10 people are all going to join your business. And that's what's so great about keeping track of your numbers. And that can be really helpful. And of course, you need to have your goals. You need to know why you're doing this. If you don't know why you're doing this, then when you get rejection, when it's 8 o'clock on a cold December night, it's freezing cold, pouring with rain, there's sleet on there, why would you want to leave the comfort of the fire, the telly, a glass of wine, and go and see somebody to talk about the business? Unless you have a real deep down burning desire, and that real deep down burning desire is your goals. You need to focus in on your goals, and if you do that, you can build a successful business.
Brilliant. And do you think that's part of waterproofing somebody who's brand new as well, to help them understand that it won't be plain sailing and not everybody you speak to will be interested in this gift that we have?
I think waterproofing is where we explain to people the downside of stuff, that we give them realistic expectations of what can be achieved, and we tell people exactly what we are doing in terms of, I guess, explain to them that some people are going to be don't speak to people straight away unless you know the answers to the questions. Just making sure that they understand there's going to be people who are going to be talking in their ears. It could be people at home, it could be friends, and if they start talking straight away without knowing all the answers, then they can be asked questions that they don't know the answers to, and they can be made to appear foolish. And so the best thing to do is to keep your lip buttoned, learn the answers, and then work with your sponsor on those first few calls so you get to understand the answers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam.
Cool.
Excellent.